Hello, IAMPRO community, and welcome to today's Q&A with the gorgeous Alex Moore, who is a documentary maker. Alex works at a massive company called Vice, and I'm a little out of my comfort zone today because normally I'm speaking to actors or directors who I'm sort of familiar with, but Alex makes documentaries, and this is kind of new territory for me. So I'm going to bring him in, and where are you? There we go. Hi. Oh. You there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I'm so sorry. Something really weird just happened with my computer. Here you are, Alex Moore, on our screen.
I've been here the whole time. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, how are you?
I'm very good. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm really good, thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us today and for imparting some knowledge about what it takes to make a documentary, what skills you might need to get there, about your university experience, and if you did go to university, and whether that was beneficial in the career that you've now chosen. So let's start there, because otherwise I'll go all over the place. Let's start with your did you always know you wanted to be in media and make telling stories, other people's stories? How did this begin for you?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily documentary specifically, but I definitely knew I wanted to work in the creative field in some capacity. I kind of at school even, I spent the entire, I stole my dad's video camera and just filmed all my mates all the time. And so anyone that was in my circle of friends, whether they were drama mates or rugby mates, they were in some sort of film. It's weird, I use that to be able to get working. I used the stuff that I made with my friends to be able to get in like work experience. So I got like a job at WBH in Boston, in Massachusetts, and like.
Can you talk us through what that is?
Yeah, it's like the BBC, but in Boston, and they co-fund a lot of BBC projects. I mean, they used to anyway, and so you see their name a lot on the bottom of BBC projects, and they work. They're not. No commercials at all. They work on a pledge basis. So every like month or so, they do like a kind of pledge for money, and then they use that money for programs. And so I went out and stayed with my auntie who is in Boston, and I got a job initially just touring people around the studio, and it sort of worked well because I had a Backstreet Boys haircut at the time, and so it fit right in. Yeah, that helped. And then where did I go? And so then I got into university. I went to the University of Sunderland, which was it sounds weird, but for two reasons. One, you could go out for £20 and have the best night on 20 and also it was the dean was Lord Putnam, who did like Chariots of Fire and so on. So it was like this, who'd done these amazing deals with Sony and lots of deals with like Chinese students. So it had a lot of influx of Chinese students, which was amazing and, culturally really interesting. And the loads of amazing equipment to be able to shoot and do what I wanted, which meant that I could make stuff all the time, but now in a professional capacity, feel like a professional capacity where I could sort of learn various techniques, how to write, how to direct, but more than anything, because I was an okay writer, I don't really like working with kit. So I don't really like taking kit around. So I sort of realized quite quickly, I was like, maybe not cut out for directing. But the thing I did like is coming up with
that though. Sorry, Alex, did you do a bit of directing? And
yeah, I did. I think it's important to do all of it. And I did that. I did lots of in front of camera stuff. I think it's important to try, if you're going to be involved, it's good to kind of get a sense of all the roles, even if you're not necessarily go down that route. So you sort of understand the industry better. But the one thing that always bubbled to the surface, and really, looking back even all the way to school, sort of made more sense, was that I was very good at like coming up with ideas and then making people buy into those ideas and then getting them made. I didn't necessarily have to do everything. I didn't necessarily have to, I found there was better directors, there was better people in front, there was better people who could work the camera, there were better set designers, all those things. but I just, the ideas part of it, I sort of figured out at uni. That's quite good. And one of the things they taught me there was that was brilliant. They hosted this whole thing on how to pitch, and it's a very important skill. Like, it's a very important skill. Like, in regular life, it's good to be able to articulate an idea, and whether it's like, stick with me, this holiday is going to be amazing, here's why, or an idea for a film or a TV show or whatever. You kind of, they sort of helped me figure out like how to articulate an idea and help people like buy into it and get excited, because when you come up with an idea, the reality is it exists in your head, but it doesn't exist to anybody else, and you have nothing other than your words and then the stuff that you can compile to get people to buy into it. I mean, I can talk about that all day, like how to make an idea into something,
Yes, I'm gonna pick your brain. So basically what I love is you come up with the ideas and then just delegate. It's great. I've got this idea, let's find all these people and make it happen.
That is the life of a producer. Is exactly what that is. Yeah. And
you have great. I mean, I've seen your idea. You're as something as simple as your Instagram feed, which is full of fun and joy, I have to say. So let's talk about how to pitch. What were your biggest tips, and what are the greatest lessons you've learned around that you can impart with us?
I went to. There was a snow day in about 2010. And it was like where London completely shut down, and it was, banks weren't open, and it was bonkers. And I'd signed up to this thing called a power presentations course that was impossible to get on. And despite the snow, there was no way I was going to miss it. So I like walked from Crouch End to Marylebone to go and do this course. And the only person when I got there was me and the instructor. And so I had like 2 days of one-on-one with this course that everybody had like revered and said was amazing, and she was amazing, and the few things stuck out. One of my favorites is that she said, she was like, describe the feelings of the fear you get when you're public speaking. Like, what's and she's like, you're like sweaty palms, you get shaky, you get a bit hot. And she's like, now describe the feelings of excitement. And they're the exact same thing. And so there's this mental shift you can do just before you're going to talk, which is, instead of being nervous, you transition those nerves to excitement. And so you become excited to talk about a thing as opposed to nervous to talk about a thing. And that means that if you can kind of lean into that, it means that even if you garble your words, it doesn't matter, because you're just enthusiastic and you're excited. And it's like, and she also was like, a lot of people like read off cards or read off notes or whatever, and that's fine. It's, part of the reason people get nervous is lack of preparation. One way to ensure that you're less nervous is be prepared. And so some people prepare and then they get nervous that they have to do justice to their preparation. So if you are A, excited to, and B, you are prepared to be able to talk about something knowledgeably, it means that even if you garble or you get lost, you can kind of take a minute and figure out what it is you're trying to say, because you're excited to talk about it, and so on. So that was really important for me in terms of like the physical ability to get the words out.
Really good.
Yeah. Sorry, Charlotte. And then the other thing I thought just was really useful was just the importance of taking people with you on the journey of what the pitch is. So starting with something that's really headline grabbing, that means that you have to pay attention. I once pitched I was taken to the US for the first time ever to Los Angeles, and I had to pitch to the guys that created Lost for a bonkers, it was like a game project. And my bosses were like, Alex, can you pitch this idea? And it was their idea, and I just had to go and do it. And I remember I sat down and the bloke walked in and it was like a full Hollywood big shot, like feet on desk, hands behind head, baseball cap on, and said, and I started talking, and he was like, stop. He was like, shut up. It's like, start again. And if you don't grab me within the first 5 seconds, imagine I'm going to leave. And I was like, will you leave? Please don't. Like, and so it was just kind of a reminder of the importance of like opening with a strong, like, headline thing. And that's, you should write that way, I think, when you're expressing ideas, and you should think about like what's the thing that you'd see on Netflix, like describing the idea, what's the 25-word summary of it? Start with that. And then lead people in. And then once people know kind of what they're going to be listening to, you can then lead them in. I like to have like a twist in a pitch. So I like to lead them in with, maybe it's some massive stats, maybe it's a thing they didn't know. And then you twist into the idea. So you can kind of, you start with a build-up of the world that you're going to be talking about. And you're like, and the reason you should care about this world is, and then your idea, and then you've got some sort of way of then suddenly there's like a transition that the audience needs to pay attention to when you're pitching an idea. I don't know if that makes any sense.
That's brilliant. So I'm dying to know what your opening 5 seconds were, and if he walked out.
No, he didn't. He was lovely. He was lovely. I honestly can't remember what the opening 5 seconds were, but it was a way of immersing an audience in the TV show Lost in a game capacity. And so I'd had this top line idea of a way of kind of, Lost was famous for, unanswered questions and taking people down a rabbit hole and so on. And I was, and principally I had a game that would do exactly that in a really unexpected way. And I just took a second to like remind myself what that idea was and then start. Yeah. And he was great and very supportive.
Right. So just get to the heart of it.
Yeah.
Now, building a documentary, creating a documentary, bringing one to life and onto TV, I would like to explore actually really deeply with you in a workshop at some point, from concept to creation. But can you just talk me through, for those people that wouldn't know, how it begins, which is in your head, I suppose, and maybe your first creative idea that got picked up?
Well, just so generally about documentary, there's a few key things.
Yes.
You can do, the reality is you can do a documentary about anything. And if you're ever at a party, I mean, Charlie, you'll know this. If you're ever at a party and people ask you about what you do for a living, the first thing people will be, and they're a bit drunk, is like, you should do a movie about me, and so, you hear that a lot. And the reality is you genuinely could do a movie about anyone. And so you could do a documentary about anything and anyone. The way into it, the tricks that I look for are, one, what's the like present tense unfolding, like in the now moment. So even if it's a retrospective story, even if it's a story about somebody absolutely iconic, why do you care about it now? Like, what are so always, it's like, you can find people in history who are, you might not know anything about, but like, why is it this point in time where an audience needs to know about this person? And if you can figure that out, you can then find, one of the ways to then make that documentary is to find ways to make those themes, the stories, the characters, the struggle, whatever it was, you can then relate to now, and part of your creative treatment for it should find a way to do that. So that's always a really important thing. And it's like, and so for example, like if you look at documentaries like Free Solo, that is a documentary all about a big idea happening now. I'm going to climb the biggest mountain in the world without ropes. And so, you've got an amazing character, you've got an amazing narrative arc, you've got a genuine jeopardy, you've got something that's unfolding, you really don't know where it's going to go, but you think if he falls and dies, that's a story. If he climbs it and it's amazing, that's a story. But then what they do, and it's the next trick, is like emotional connection. Like, why do we care about this person? What's the reason? And then how do you draw that out? That documentary, Free Solo, is really, it's great in that the story of climbing the mountain is brilliant. But the reason why it's a work of genius is because they bring in the lead climber's girlfriend, and suddenly that humanizes the lead character, because you now have somebody else who cares about them and is worried about them. and sees their flaws and sees when they've hurt themselves and knows they're not invincible. And so through their eyes, you can see that character in a different way. So for me, that's always a key thing. Is like, how are you going to get emotional connection? Why do we care? It's the reason why, like a VT moment in a game show, for example, or an entertainment show can make people cry, because it's like suddenly there's a connection to a person. So but a documentary is like that, but much deeper, So that's the next thing. And then the last is like, not necessarily the last, but what another key one is access. So, if you're going to sell a documentary to Netflix, HBO, Nat Geo, whatever, like, what have you got that no one else has got? So you've got, about this story. Cool. You found a way to make it relatable for contemporary audiences. It's going to be emotionally really engaging for these reasons. And this is how you're going to draw out the character. But on top of that, it's that, I've got access to whatever it is. It means that it's the first time anyone's let cameras in. You've got something tangible that no one else has got. And then, and then again, that same level of access can be applied to, you bring in a director who you should be excited by this director because they did this, or because this is the first time they've tried this, or whatever. It's like the package then feels very complete and very real. And so, with all that going for it, you've got present tense, you've got emotional connection, you've got access that someone hasn't got, you've got a team of talent that's impressive and whatever. And if you've got all those going for it, you genuinely are in good shape to take that to a network and get an answer on it, at least.
Do you have many people from outside your company, apart from Charlie Brooks, who rings you sometimes going, oh, I think this is a really good idea. What about this, Alex? Do you have other people come to you with ideas and say, look, I've got this? Or do you go out and find the ideas?
I generate ideas in three ways. So one is I genuinely just think about something inspires an idea, and I will go and reach out and try and get access. So I see something and I think, wow, that would be really exciting. Why is no one doing that? And I go after that. And that's free from any network target or aim or goal. It's just, in my mind, that someone should do that story, and I go after that. And that's one, and I'll bash that around with my team, or, I'll reach out and try and get access myself, whatever it is. And then the second is people bring me ideas. So it'll be, and that can be anything from, we fully shot this thing. We made this documentary years ago where a bloke had been shooting for 5 years in the tunnels of Bucharest. And, he didn't even speak Romanian. And it was like, it was, sorry, Hungarian. And it was, and so occasionally he'd be following like a cat, just and disappear from the subject, because he was more interested in what was going on. But the reality was, what he had was an incredible film about these boys who were just living their this extraordinary life under these tunnels.
Wow.
And from that, we were able to take the material and craft it into a really solid, festival winning 90-minute movie. And so that's like an extreme example. And then the other way is like, someone brings you something more than a top line. So it's if someone comes in and goes, Madonna, and you're like, yeah, that's a person, but there's no, yes, you could do a documentary about Madonna, but what have you got? It's like, if someone comes in and goes, oh, I've, got access to all the behind the scenes footage from the, whatever tour, suddenly maybe you've got something and you can craft that into something. Yeah. Or maybe someone's got some access, or they've got a relationship with the director who's coming off the next thing, whatever it might be. There's and then the third one is is more of a calculated development thing, where I will look at a network and what they're looking for, and then specifically craft an idea for them. So if I know that they're about adventure, then I will look for areas where they haven't covered. I'll look for the gaps that I think adventure could be found. and then find unique ways, like I was describing earlier, in those spaces that allow an idea to come through that might have something unique about it.
So in the ideas that come through organically, whether it's through somebody else or in your own head, you would then go, oh, Channel 4, BBC 3, ITV, and find the right fit and the right commissioner in order to take that to?
Exactly. So, I've got a bunch of personal relationships just through having worked in the business for a long time. But the reality is those commissioners will take an idea from anyone if it's the right project. It's just, but it's like, if I suddenly turn around and I want to pitch a, singing elimination competition show, for example, it's unlikely. It's that's not in my wheelhouse of experience. It's certainly not something Vice is famous for. So whilst yes, we could hire the right people and do it, taking those ideas to a commissioner, really you should think about like, okay, well, I can reach out to this commissioner, but I'm probably going to need to like potentially reach out to someone with more expertise in this space that I can connect with. So you might reach out to like a Fremantle or a Psycho or whatever to kind of bolster that and give yourself that. But yes, in short, if you've got an idea, you've got a documentary project, you take what you think, TLC are like, we're looking, we're about empowering women. Nat Geo are about action and adventure and travel. HBO Max are about kind of big poppy, like newsworthy projects. There's everybody's got like a unique it's Hulu, people think of like a Netflix, but they skew much younger. They actually target like a 16 to 25, 16 to 30 demo. And so like, you're more likely to get a documentary away about sneakers or youth culture but like with something in that capacity that Hulu are going to get excited by than you are with Netflix, for example. But like, and again, there are kind of shifting trends all the time. So a few years ago, anthologies were a big deal. You'd see documentaries like 7 Days Out, or Playbook, which is, the coaches giving kind of insight on like how to be better at life through their experience and coaching. And each episode is a different coach. And so that's a great example of an anthology. And 7 Days Out was like, this is 7 days out from the Chanel launch. It's 7 days out from and like then suddenly anthology is off the table. Suddenly everybody goes, well, anthologies aren't working for us because audiences are only picking episode 1, episode 4, they're not watching them in order. So then it goes back to a narrative arc, and then narrative arc suddenly, you'll find that people aren't watching. You only want smaller bit, bite-sized things. So it goes back. There's kind of you need to pay attention to kind of what's selling, what's working in the market. So even things that you think commissioners will know, you want that extra level of kind of insight, which means that. Which means that you should be. It's not just about taking an idea away and coming back and going, ta-da. It's about like regular communication with commissioners, like instead of just shove really hard on the door and hope it opens, like you want to be constantly pushing on them, because the reality is that what they've commissioned that week might be something that you're working on. They might have something that they've put out they thought was going to be big and it's been a flop. They might have something that's suddenly like, this was a runaway success, so we want more in this area. And if you're kind of finger on the pulse of that, you can kind of your slate of ideas, you can kind of be fine tuning and honing for those buyers more specifically.
Okay. Have you ever been in a situation where you've working your little butt off on a documentary and then somebody else, you've been pipped to the post effectively, and it's like, oh shit, they're sort of covering, oh no, and it's sort of the jeopardy?
all the time.
Really?
One is being running I just ran an independent movie and TV company, and that's one of the hardest things. Is the time, effort versus reward. How much time you sink into an idea before you float it out to the market. Because if you sink loads of time, money, and whatever in, the reality is you may get there and someone else is doing it, and And so you have to be, that is part of the skill, is like knowing when to take an idea out. Have you got enough on it that it has something that you can pitch and people get excited about? But you don't want to leave it too late so that it's, when you do take it out, someone else has already got there with the same project. So that's definitely a skill, is that, and that's what I mean about regular discussions with commissioners. You should be constantly finding ways to make sure they know, put a marker in the sand that we're in this area, we're protecting it. And there are all sorts of tricks you can do to protect that. I mean, if you want me to go into those, I can.
We might do that when we do the workshop. I suppose there's a level of secrecy and NDA signing and that sort of thing that has to go on your part. I mean, I'd be useless. I love telling everyone everything. So
it's so difficult. It's so difficult I mean, even doing this, I'm desperate to tell you about specific projects, but it's it's so hard to work. That is a really tricky area, because at the same time, you need collaboration and you need to bring in expertise and whatever, but you also have to keep your cards close to your chest. So that's a balancing act as well.
Yeah, of course. So this is all very well for Alex Moore, who's worked for many, many years within the industry and has networked and known commissioners and has now relationships and is heard. What advice do you have, and where would you say for young creatives to begin? Sort of, they're just at the start of their career, that have got ideas for a documentary film. What path would you suggest might be a good one for them? What advice do you have around that?
There's a number of ways in. I mean, the breakthrough we had when I was at Grain was winning the best documentary short category at the Oscars, and we won that twice, once for Netflix and once for A&E Networks. And that is a good way, if you have a project, entering festivals and getting recognition and so on is a great way to get ahead of steam behind a project. But that assumes that you've got a project, and that assumes that you've taken something out. So that's one thing. If you've got something and you're up and running with an idea, that's one way to kind of give it airtime, is put it into festivals and build a campaign around it. And you can really sort of build notoriety and reputation and so on doing that. If you're right at the beginning of the process, however,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. You meant
I was going to say, let's take a step before that. Sorry, that was that awkward. Yeah.
So if you're at that stage and you've got an initial idea, it's kind of looking at the thing I was saying before, really, which is if you're going to do something, why are you doing it? Why does anybody care about that project? The one thing I see all the time is, especially in kind of young filmmakers, is people who invest so much time and effort in a particular project that they become very defensive of and overdevelop and over push. And it's the first thing you see in kind of development people who aren't that experienced, is that they will be very fighty for an idea because they think that you have to fight to get an idea through. The reality is, that isn't true. Of course, you have to stand by an idea and protect it and so on. And you hear stories like Queen's Gambit took 30 years to make or whatever. So we get it. But I think the other thing to remember is that people really want good ideas out there in the world. They really need content. They need projects. It is hard to get a thing made, but it's only hard because the bar is so high in terms of quality and competition. So if you have a good idea, someone will listen. If you have people want to make something good. If someone brings me a brilliant idea, it doesn't matter where it's from. If it's good, I will definitely pick it up and help someone develop it. But I'm also quite ruthless about telling people when I think something's good and when it's not. And usually, what makes it good has it got unique access? Has it been done a bunch of times before? Why are we doing it now? What is relevant about this for 2021, 2022? Is it sellable? So, the 9 years under in the tunnels under Bucharest, tricky sell, honestly, because actually, where does that go? That's, it's not in English. So you immediately your buyer's limit. And so that means then you've got to start reaching out to multiple territories who will take that for different reasons. So it's, you kind of want to think like, why are people going to pay attention to this? What have I got about this that is unique? Who are my characters, and how am I going to bring that through? Because characters, the best documentaries are the ones that feel like dramas. They're the ones that you cannot believe are legit. There's a documentary called Undefeated that won the Oscar in like 2012, and it's a documentary about a football team, American football team, experiencing like race problems in the team, rivalries, whatever. And then this coach comes in who like sorts them out, and they go on this unbeaten run that it's a Disney film, but it happens for real, and so it's like, it's that in itself that's going to carry you along, because the characters are so extraordinary. You look at someone like Tiger King, for example. That's a project where the characters are all at 11. They're all the most extra possible, and so there's a reason to get excited about it. And then I guess lastly, it's what have you got that helps people visualize the idea? So have you got anything on tape? Have you got a master interview with somebody? Have you got something tangible that is not just a good idea, but it has something behind it? It's got some bolstering that gives it an edge. It's access to a family, it's access to a moment, it's a contributor who's never told their story before. You've got something in there that then gives that a reason to get excited about it.
Fantastic. Do you have people sending you in tapes, sort of young people saying, I've made this, and then asking to just come in and be maybe runners within the production company that you work for? And is that a way up where people can make their way to the top? I mean, I've seen runners go up through the ranks, third AD, second AD, first AD to directors. So I know it's definitely a thing within the acting industry. But for people making documentaries, is that something that's possible?
Yes, it is. It is possible. It's, the reality is, however, the day-to-day, the brutal reality is that the day-to-day is that everybody's really busy, right? Obviously. And you're kind of cracking on with your day-to-day job. So if something kind of comes in that's unsolicited and that's you've not seen before, and it needs to be something you care about. An idea, it's unlikely that because someone sends you an idea, you then make them a runner on a project. However, it might be that if someone sends you an idea that is really good and got something to it, that is an immediate way in. I mean, I'm genuinely doing that right now. Someone sent me an idea. Their experience was really limited. They'd made a handful of music videos before, but like low-key ones for friends and so on. And they brought an idea in that had access to a particular family that I thought was extraordinary. And, in their mind, it was just going to be this small film that they would direct. But it's so good that in my head, we're now bringing them on, and it's kind of a $6 to $8 million
wow
documentary series, that they will be a producer on.
Yes.
And that's because it's a solid idea, it had something, and then I can help them do it. And there's a reason for me to help them do it. It's not just about doing people favors. It's like you've really got your place there.
Yes.
But there are plenty. I mean, look, getting runners jobs. There's plenty of people who need runners all the time, and they advertise on places like Television and that. You can get a runner's job on stuff, through the sort of official routes.
You often see those people climbing up the ranks within documentary in the environment that they're learning, I suppose is what I meant. I know that those two angles they'll come into it differently, but yeah. I mean, totally. The people that I've seen go up the ranks in documentaries have been people that have gone and done something themselves. So, they've gone and shot they've found, Screen Island money, or they found some kind of fund for like 5K to then go and shoot a master interview and do it in a clever way. I saw a documentary about someone who escaped North Korea, and it was so creative. It was like a 5-minute documentary. It was so creative, and it had they'd found ways to like take a master interview and then add something else to it, where suddenly you
you definitely couldn't ignore them as a talent in the business because they'd just done something cool and clever.
Yeah.
So the next thing you saw, you're like, oh, wow, we should definitely work with this person. If they've got a new idea, we should definitely pay attention.
Yeah.
I saw one girl, her and her family were made homeless right after her graduation, and she just filmed it all. And turns out she's a brilliant filmmaker. She filmed the whole thing. She documented it. She interviewed her own mum. She, when she was going to try to find, support and, to be homed, and they were staying in hostels and stuff, she filmed the whole time. And it's like, things like that, like, definitely gave her an edge, and suddenly she definitely had to pay attention to the stuff that she was working on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, amazing. 2 last questions. One, can you remember your first creative idea that got picked up and how that felt, and what was it? First creative idea that got, so it was a weird one. I was hired as a question writer in really early days. So I did a few runners jobs and production assistant jobs and so on. And then I got hired as a question writer on a game show. And it was part of a company who billed themselves as an ideas company. And they had this pitch to ITV Play, it was called, which was like a game show thing. And they had a bunch of slots to pitch. And they were one short, and they asked for a bunch of ideas. So I put an idea in, and the only one that got taken forward by ITV was that idea. Wow.
And it was a really awful game show thing, but it meant that I was hired. It meant that I could, sculpt the format, pick the presenter. It's not what I ended up doing, but it gave me a good experience of building an entertainment project, putting a project together, working with people, working against the budget, having stakeholders who cared.
Yeah.
So that was that. And the other thing was, really early days, I pitched I pitched a Deal or No Deal game when Deal or No Deal was a daytime TV show and was not primetime, and it just went mental and everybody bought it. It was this huge selling, like, Christmas present game, and it was just an idea that I'd got. I was like, oh, that could be a good Christmas game, and it was. Yeah,
that's amazing.
I don't know. It's obviously a long way from where I ended up, but it was all part of pitching. I was so inexperienced that I remember when I was pitching the idea, I pitched it, and I got to the end of my bit, and then just looked at my phone during the pitch, and my boss, who talked through the budget and how we were going to make it and so on, came out and was like, "Excellent pitch. You'll never work again if you ever behave that way in a pitch and look at your phone," and things like that. Like, I was 22 at the time. I think I was 23, and had never been in an environment where you couldn't just do that. And obviously, that sounds like something that sounds moronic now to say out loud that was a thing that you would ever do. But same point, it's like experience of the world, and I remember my boss made that very clear, and from that point on, you pay attention in a pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Learning from our mistakes is a big one.
Yeah.
What can you tell me your most inspirational must-see documentary that you would recommend to us at IAMPRO? Ones that we made. I'll give you a few good ones. So ones that we made at Grain. Learning to skateboard in a Warzone if you're a girl is great. It's a new way to, that is a very different way to explore a, Warzone story. It's a female empowerment story. It's got amazing characters. It's got such good heart to it. It's got incredible access, genuinely in a secret location, in Kabul. Wow. So very, very proud of that. That won the first Oscar for A&E Networks in 2020, and I love that. And then other people's work. I really love Free Solo. I always thought that was great because it's not the most perfect documentary, but the lead character, what he's doing, how they filmed that. They genuinely had to put cameras into a mountain
They had to have people lowered down, so they had to have people shooting on the ground. Very difficult to capture that and do it in a way. It's also filmed over a long period of time. It's got emotional power. So I love that. And then just as a weird one, like just for a bit of, because documentaries, all different styles are important. I thought casting John Bonet was very clever on Netflix, because that solved the problem, but in a really unique way. So that one is cool because that was a story about a murder of a child like pageant star, and she was murdered and they never found the killer. And so what this documentary did that's so extraordinary is you've got no archive to speak of the murder and the family and so on, of the time, other than the news of what happened afterwards and, some of the pageants that were filmed before. But so you've got a period of time that when you make a documentary, how are you going to visually show that on screen? What can you physically show? And so the only real way you can do it is to do a drama. And obviously, if you do a drama, you've got to then pick it's like who says that's the way it played out, because we don't know for sure. They never found the killer. We'd be making all these speculations about what we think we know if we're making a drama. So the reason why it's cool is, with all those limitations, what they then did is they made a series of scenes that were dramatic scenes that were pivotal moments that we know happened. But what we don't know is how they happened, what the motivation was, what the characters were experiencing during those moments. So we know, for example, the mum found the body, but what we don't know is, did the mum find the body knowing that it was killed by the dad, or knowing that she'd done it, or that she was having to like play up the moment, or did she do it where it was tragic and she found the body and she couldn't believe what she was seeing because her daughter had died and so on. And so what you see is they cast a bunch of different John Bonets, they cast a bunch of different mums and a bunch of different dads and so on. And then you see the same scenes played out with different actors reading different motivational ideas. So suddenly the mum shows up and she's in on it, and her reaction is therefore, you can see that she's like playing it up. Sometimes she shows up and she's absolutely devastated. Sometimes she sees it and she knows that the husband did it, but she doesn't know what's, it's like,
yeah. God, yeah, I've never seen anything like that, I don't think, before.
Yeah, that's worth a watch.
Yeah, I'll put that on the list. And do you have a book recommendation that will inspire young creatives and motivate in any way? What would that be?
A book recommendation?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you a good one is Molly's Game, which turned into or The Wolf of Wall Street. They are good because they're stories that are real people who experience something sort of unparalleled. They genuinely pushed. There's definitely questionable motives at all points during that, but you see a real their perspective on the world and why they were doing it and so on. And they're both unique and different from the films. And you can see because you can read that and it's in their voice. You can then see when it's become the film. You can see how a book based on a true story has become that. But what you're thinking about, like a documentary, you can then there's your brain. You look at it and see how it would be done if it was a documentary and so on. So it's like that. Those books I think are fun because you can see the whole creative process.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Alex Moore. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure. And I really hope we can get you on to do a session with our young people on how to pitch, because like you said, I think that's an important part of life and not just pitching for documentaries.
Totally. It totally is. I agree with you. And I'd be happy to help. Thank you for having me on, Charlie.
Have a great day. Thank you, Alex. Lots of love.
You too.
Bye.